Right. Cool. Okay. So yeah, no, yep. Now it's record. Yeah, it's recording now. Cool. All right. Hello, guys. My name is Pedro, and today I'm here with Crypto Lark. Say hello to everybody.
Hey guys.
Yeah, Crypto Lark. What can you tell us about yourself? Who is Crypto Lark? Who was Lark Davis before cryptocurrency?
Who was that? I think I was still the same person before cryptocurrency. I'd have to check though. But my name's Lark. I run the YouTube channel, the Crypto Lark. I like to talk about basically everything going on in crypto. I tend to take a macro view of what's going on, looking at the big picture, the big events that are actually shaping what's happening in the cryptocurrency market. So that's where a lot of my focus ends up going. Tend to look at as well, interviewing interesting people from around the space,
Yep.
all that kind of fun stuff.
And I mean, you like which projects? I know. I mean, I shouldn't be asking you this right away, but I mean, which
Let's
projects?
go for it.
Yeah, let's go for it. I mean, which projects are your favorite right now? The ones that you like the most? Like, I mean, and I'm talking about considering your interviews and the people who you've spoken with.
Right. Considering my interviews, the people
Yep.
I've spoken with, I mean, I guess you probably want to look at. I would say what my biggest portfolio positions are,
Okay.
and that actually comes down to I haven't actually. I say that because I haven't actually talked to everyone that make up my
Okay.
biggest portfolio positions. So, um, outside of Bitcoin, of
Yep.
course, Ethereum remains for me a very, very interesting cryptocurrency. I think it's got a very bright future ahead of it. I know there's a lot of people out there who are very impatient and
Yeah.
have never built anything that has a $20 billion valuation and don't. Then, so it's kind of hard for regular people to conceptualize why it's taking so long to upgrade Ethereum and all these different things. But Ethereum is an incredibly robust protocol. So I'm very bullish on the future of Ethereum. I'm also very excited about the future of Cardano.
Yep.
Cardano, I think, could be one of the major Ethereum competitors. And, some people will say that, okay, only one cryptocurrency will capture all value from a certain use case. And that's just simply not true. We see Bitcoin, for example, captures the
Store
lion's
volume. Yep.
share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it captures the lion's share of the peer-to-peer money
Yep.
aspect,
Sure.
right? And look, Ethereum is money too, but Ethereum brings a whole other range of use cases in the same way that Cardano does. And if we look a bit farther down, you got people who like Litecoin and stuff like that. And, it's cheaper and faster in Bitcoin. It's got a community of people who exchange in Litecoin, and that gives that value. But outside of, I'd say, Ethereum and Cardano, which are two of my largest positions at the moment outside of Bitcoin, I've also got a decent amount of Monero. I think the use case for Monero is very interesting. I think it's a very robust cryptocurrency. So there's that. And also Binance. Big fan of
Yep.
Binance. I've been a
Yep.
big fan of Binance since, I first started trading on it way back in 2017. I've been, a fan and an affiliate for a long time. So I've got a good chunk of Binance coins sitting around as well.
Do you think that Binance, as a company, do you think has done more good things or more bad things? I'm a fan of Binance as well, especially as a company. I think CZ is amazing. He's
Yeah.
just a business guy. He knows what he's doing, and I think his leadership has been quite important in the crypto space. Because he tends to unite people rather than divide, and I think that's an important message, especially at the moment. But do you think what do you think about the Binance? Do you think they've been doing good things for the space in terms of decentralization, for example?
Binance has done absolutely amazing things. And look, there's always going to be critics.
Sure.
If you do something big, the bigger you get, the more critics you will have. And some of those criticisms, are more founded than others, we could say. And I'll get into a couple of those. But overall, Binance has been an absolute monumental force in the cryptocurrency ecosystem overall. We look at, they basically continue to time and again set the trends, and other exchanges follow what they do. That is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Will it always be that way? Hard to say. But right now, Binance has been a major trend setter. That's been 2017, that's been 2018, and now in 2019.
Sure.
They've continued to be at the forefront of what's going on in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And they've built a massive ecosystem. You got the Binance chain, and you can use BNB to pay for stuff all over the world. And you got all these different wallets supporting it and all this stuff going on. You have margin trading and lending and staking as a service and a lot of stuff. Now, the negatives, and these are varying in negatives. Now, these are the criticisms I see other people bring in, and some of my own criticisms, and they're not necessarily all bad. For example, we could look at launching staking as a service or even the lending services.
Sure.
Now, it's very easy to say that's a bad thing. I have my criticisms of it in terms of if everybody's lending and staking all of their cryptocurrencies on Binance, then Binance becomes, well, even more powerful. They're already one of the most powerful exchanges, but then all this money flows there, and that creates a risk in terms of security and decentralization and all that stuff. That's something to be aware of, but I understand. I really, really understand why people do it. People want to earn money on their USDT. It's just sitting in your wallet, otherwise not earning any money. So go lend it out somewhere, provide liquidity for the margin markets. That's a thing. Right now, there's a risk to reward ratio there. You need to understand that before you run off and just throw your money at something. Staking as a service is a little bit interesting too, because the reality is, as much as we might like people to all run their own nodes and provide those services to the network, they're simply not doing it.
Sure.
They're just not. So when you have an exchange offering staking as a service, you're centralizing the power of those coins on one exchange, but at the same time, you're also securing the network. So there's trade-offs that we talk about here. And the other thing that I do want to mention is, of course, the IEO market. There have been a lot of critics of the IEO market, mostly those who are salty about what happened in 2017 and held their bags in 2018. Look, I held some bags way longer than I should have. I'll be the first one to say that, but
I think we all have, to be honest. That's
I think
okay.
We all have.
It's part of
That's
the right.
Right. This is it's right, part of the rite of passage. And so I look at the IEO trend is actually a net positive for the space. There are all people who say like, oh, we don't need any more new projects. We don't need any more innovation. There's already been enough innovation. Stop innovating. Stop making new things. Stop, creating more stuff. I don't like that. Sure. I personally think that more innovation is a great thing. I think that the IEO market has been very profitable for those who have been involved. That being said, it does remain a risk to reward ratio, like basically everything else in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I mean, I see loads of comments on Twitter of people like, just throwing in all their life savings, all their money into, I don't know, into some into some projects, even if it's like a good project like Ethereum, it's you should take, you should consider it, right? I mean, don't do that. I mean, that's my whole point. I mean, even if you say Bitcoin, right? I love Bitcoin and I love what it represents. But at the same time, don't throw all your money into it. I mean, if you understand the technology, deeply, if you run your own node, if you develop, etc., maybe then, I don't know. But even then, I think it's still a huge risk. We need to understand this. It's still 10 years in. So it's still at its early stages. People tend to forget that, and so for me, I see Bitcoin as so far the only store of value, at least personally, right? But I obviously, if you ask me, is all remaining to Bitcoin? Of course not. I'm not crazy, right? I mean, I will diversify. Obviously, Ethereum, as you say, it's one of my favorites as well. I'm not worried about the move to proof of stake, and that's exactly one of the points I want to touch, because at least to me, and that's just personally, I see Ethereum so far as a currency, right? Just you need Ethereum just to run stuff on their protocol, right? But so far, I see some people storing their value in Ethereum, some hardcore fans, but most of utility should come from the tokens, right? From people running stuff on the Ethereum network, like the DeFi projects, right? So if that develops, and if it develops further, because it's already how many millions is it got? I don't know, hundreds already, but. My point is, if it develops further, I see that Ethereum could become potentially a huge store of value as well. Definitely, proof of stake, that could be that's just an adoption amplifier. I would put it, if it works well, because
we're talking about a complete reworking of the economics of Ethereum, and I think that's something that not enough people actually understand. And because what essentially we're going to do, we're going to bring in staking, which is going to see millions to tens of millions of Ethereum get locked up into staking, which is going to create an automatic sense of scarcity of Ethereum on the markets.
Yep.
We already have millions of Ethereum that are locked in Maker. We already have lots of Ethereum that are locked up on different platforms like Synthetics and Compound Finance being lent on different platforms. When you start to realize that this is what's going on an economic sense, that you have all these people who are actually buying and hoarding Ethereum in order to get those annual return percentages, then the economics of Ethereum on the open markets is going to change significantly. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to say, hey, we're going to go proof of stake, and then all of a sudden Ethereum goes to $1 million or something like that. No. This is a cumulative process. We need time for people to come on, to start to actually doing the staking on the network, for the decentralized finance platforms to actually continue to grow, because right now the user bases are quite low for all of them. But look at the big picture. This is what is happening. This is what is going to continue to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And especially, I mean, how do you mix everything that's happening in crypto? We're going to, take a big jump now, and I love these questions. How do you mix everything with, an upcoming recession? Because I want to go deeper, into what's going on, in the economics of the world, but the conclusion is going to be there's a recession looming, loads of analysts are saying that it's, not me, basically, and it does seem like it. But how do you mix both things? Do you think it's going to be good or bad for crypto?
I think it's going to be good for crypto. And actually, it's a crazy thing. Obviously, you don't want to see a recession happen. That's just terrible for a lot of people in a lot of ways, right? But what we see basically is that we are going to see more and more fiat currencies collapsing. We're already seeing this in a lot of different countries. We're going to see more and more banking restrictions come in. For people who live in safe countries, the world is crumbling out there. And it's not to sound dramatic, but it's really, you look at Argentina, look at Lebanon, look at Turkey, look all around the world. We're seeing some massive problems happening here. And when you start to take all that into account, where are people going to flee, right? People are going to go into gold. They always have. But we're also going to see people moving into other assets, to new assets, to digital gold, to money that can be sent around the world at the click of a button. And that's going to be Bitcoin. That's going to be other things as well. Some of the stable coins might retain a certain amount of value. Gold-backed stable coins might rise in prominence, for example, but still.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for the people who don't know why I'm saying that, there's the recession might be looming. The indicators. Although some the unemployment is quite low, but that I think it's kind of like a quite a passive indicator, to be honest. It's a lagging indicator. Sorry. If you look into the let's say recession indicators, proper recession indicators, interest rates, for example, or the quantity of money being printed, it's just mad, it's just insane. So I have to 100% agree with you on that. I think, we might see the collapse of, further currencies, and Bitcoin can be, and other cryptocurrencies as well as gold, obviously, they can be, a safe haven for, people in everywhere, basically, especially because it's so easy to buy, right, compared to gold. I've bought gold, but it's not easy, to be honest, because you need to make sure it's gold. I could buy an ETF. That's fine. I could go to eToro and buy, gold, right? But I'm talking about owning gold, and that's my point. It's not easy to own gold. It's not easy to store gold and to keep it safe, right? It's much easier to do it with Bitcoin or any other crypto, Ledger, whatever. You keep it safe on a sheet of paper. Boom, done. It's super easy. And the more people that see value in it, the more people that just use it. Do you think that governments in the future? Do you think there'll be a barrier, or they will help with adoption? Because now we see China, the president, just saying that blockchain now is okay, and people should develop startups in blockchain using the technology. So, but do you think that they will foster the wide adoption of public blockchain, public cryptocurrencies, or you already know where I'm going with this, right? So
yeah,
what do you think?
I think it highly depends on the government that we're talking about. We have to keep that real. That we're going to see we are already seeing a very, very different approach to this globally. We could take Japan as a great example of a country that's largely getting it right, and you can sit down and criticize them about different regulations they've passed and things like this. But in general, they've been trying to do regulation in such a way that lets the industry thrive.
Hmm.
They've also taken a very strong interest at a national level and at a business level and a personal level within Japan into open public networks. And I think that's a really important thing, because if we see what, for example, China is talking about, that's not an open public network. That is a permissioned, centralized,
Yep.
Orwellian kind of nightmare coin, much like Facebook's Libra. So Japan's been largely getting that right. We see other countries doing that too. We see Switzerland and Malta and a handful of other places that are actually taking really, really positive steps. But it's just so varied depending on what country you're looking at. Some countries allow ICOs, other countries don't
Yep.
allow ICOs. Some countries allow mining, some countries encourage mining, some countries discourage mining, some countries ban mining, so you got all this different stuff going on. So governments can be a real hindrance to adoption. We have seen this play out time and time again, and it's very unfortunate that governments behave in such a way. But of course, they want to maintain their power, and the power of governments, in a big part, comes from their ability to create money out of thin air. They have a monopoly on money and the creation of money and the power that gives them to just print money, pay police officers to come and beat your head in, if you step out of line. So there's that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And especially because, if we think where we are now, where we are today, I mean, governments, the ability for governments to create a proper fiat currency that's completely unconnected to anything, just fate, right? Is because at some point they forbid people from owning gold, right? So I mean that's the only reason. Otherwise, I doubt that we would reach this point, to be honest, because more people would own gold, and that's just the reason. Network effects, right? And Bitcoin can, I think, and this is my point. I think Bitcoin can actually solve this problem, right? Because it can it can have the network effects, the necessary ones for currencies everywhere to just go into a Bitcoin standard, basically. Maybe that's a bit utopian, but we'll see how it goes. How do you think, for example, because we spoke about China, how do you see China comparing now to the US? Do you think that the world is shifting towards Asia, China, or what are your your personal world views on economic world views?
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be China's century, in the same way that last century is America's century. And that's not, I'm not being anti-American or anything, guys. But this is just the reality. I mean, if you've ever visited American cities, a lot of American cities, the infrastructure is crumbling. There's a lot of systemic problems that are happening in America that are simply not being addressed because the country is spending 55% of its discretionary budget on the military, and another massive percentage of their yearly budget on servicing the debt. On servicing the debt. America's so in debt that it spends a large percentage every year of all the money they take in simply to pay the debt. So it leaves a tiny fraction of money left over for essential public services like schools and roads and airports and bridges and investments and stuff like this. So it's a very big problem. Whereas China, on the other hand, has so much money, they're literally building entire metropolises that no one even lives in. That's how much money is floating around China right now. They literally have built these ghost cities, a city that can house 1 million people, and no one even lives there because they just have so much money they're throwing around right now, which is a different kind of crazy. But if you go to Chinese cities, they're big and flashy, and it looks like the cities of the future. We see where the economic power is flowing. We see what China's diplomatic vision has been, and I think it's a very different vision from the U.S., whereas the U.S. largely interacts with people by force and violence. They're currently at war with 7 or 8 different countries, can't even keep count half the time of how many countries the U.S. is bombing. Plus, this is one of the craziest things, and I think why we've seen so many rises to rising competitors to the U.S.-led financial system is that the U.S. doesn't just have enemies. They also have friends, unfortunately, and they treat those friends just like they treat their enemies often, which is a terrible situation to be America's friend, because Japan, one of America's closest allies, was threatened with sanctions for daring to do business with someone that America didn't like. Same with India. Same with Europe. Europe's been threatened with sanctions multiple times from the United States, and those are close allies. They are breaking their own world order through their greed and their arrogance and their hubris. And that system it's unmaintainable. They can't continue this. That's why we're seeing Europe launching a SWIFT competitor, which is a massive challenge to the US-led financial order. We just saw yesterday the BRICS nations, so that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They are planning to launch a cryptocurrency to connect the 5 economies together for settlements between them. That's massive. That is another massive challenge to the US-led financial order. China is launching a SWIFT competitor. Russia is launching a SWIFT competitor, right? We see places like Iran looking at launching state digital currencies. The power of the US dollar is maintained through violence, and the power of the US government is maintained through the US dollar. And as the dollar slips, their power for violence slips, and it's a massive just craziness. Whereas China, flip it around, China, what's China been doing? They haven't been going to war. They haven't been invading their neighbors. They haven't been murdering everyone all around the world. They go to places like Africa and say, hey, we want to do business with you. And as a bonus for doing business with you, we're going to build schools. We're going to build hospitals. We're going to build roads. We're going to build ports. And we're going to give you a bunch of money. Now, that's a whole different thing. You can criticize them for supporting horrible dictators and all this fun kind of stuff, but so does the US. So sure. It's a very different business model in terms of making friends with people and giving them things and helping them build their countries up versus bombing them into submission. So one, it's more of the, there's an old saying that a drop of honey will attract more flies than a gallon of poison or something like that. So,
No, but you're absolutely correct. I think that I think they completely shifted like their behavior, the way that they deal with the world now. It's not even about being open. It's they understand how the world works, and they just want to help other countries build themselves, just to build new economical relations, because power shifts, as you just said, right? Which is a great thing, And going back to crypto, I mean, I have to say, your message is really, really powerful. This is one of the things that I like about your videos, is that I think you focus on the right messages, to be honest, about openness and the ability for people to express themselves. And I like those ideas, obviously. And I think they do represent the community of that supports Bitcoin, I guess, So I think that one day there's a high chance for Bitcoin to be honest, a store of value on the standard, if we do have a shift within the economic panorama, because if if the US loses some power, it doesn't go entirely to China. I'm assuming, right? Some of it it will go into Bitcoin probably, right? Gold and other stuff, but Bitcoin as well. Especially because when we see some statistics about the millennials, they're all of them, or 90%, 80%, are going into Bitcoin. They prefer Bitcoin to other currency, store of values. So I mean, the panorama for Bitcoin is looking pretty good, I think. In terms of because I want to go back to just to finalize the conversation, I want to discuss some other cryptos and how do you see the future? Let's say that that there's high adoption and projects built on Ethereum. How do you see the security of this project evolving? Do you think that they will stay approximated to Bitcoin, or they will diverge in the future? How do you think? No, besides how much money is going into each, obviously.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's obviously one that's been talked about a lot ever since Ethereum really came into being, and of course, XRP fans will also want to see this be true for their coin, and a lot of other coins too. But I think when we start to look at the utility being built and the use case being built, I mean, this is something I've always thought. If we see a cryptocurrency that has a higher market cap than Bitcoin, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin has failed. I mean, what do you think the entire market cap of the internet would be? It's an unfathomably big number. It's almost all world commerce is now happening in one form or another through the internet. Now, gold is $8 trillion. It's quite significant, right?
Sure.
You would no one would say that gold has failed as a store of value simply because the internet has become bigger than it. So we are still very, very early in the overall crypto adoption globally. But when we see, let's say 10 years or 20 years down the line, if we see a situation where the rest of the cryptocurrency market has a significantly large market cap combined versus Bitcoin, or even if one cryptocurrency, whether it be Ethereum or something else, has a larger market cap than Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has a market cap of, let's say, $8 trillion,
Yep.
Bitcoin's done just fine. And that's okay. That's perfect, really. So I definitely see that we will see, are we going to see the flippening happen soon? Who the heck knows? Will we ever see a flippening? Hard to say. But we are going to see a lot of value flowing into these networks, because the reality is that right now, these other networks like Ethereum are offering a very strong value proposition that Bitcoin is simply not offering. Now, if you talk to a Bitcoin maximalist, they will say, yeah, okay, maybe in 5 or 10 or 20 years, Bitcoin will do the same thing. So why even bother with Ethereum? I don't have 5, 10 or 20 years to wait, nor does the rest of the world. We already see these use cases being built today on top of Ethereum. And the best that Bitcoin can offer right now in terms of these different things, and I don't think Bitcoin needs to have games running on top of it. Let Ethereum do that. I don't think that Bitcoin needs to have tokenized stocks running on top of it. Let Ethereum do that. Sure. I don't need to make a loan on Bitcoin to myself. Let Ethereum do that, right? Let Ethereum do these things. But right now we have, with Bitcoin is great. Peer-to-peer money is the securest money in the world. If I'm going to send someone $10 million, I'm going to do it using Bitcoin, not another protocol. Yep. That being said, with Bitcoin, what we see is that it is possible to bring tokens into Bitcoin right now. The problem is that you either are looking at doing some kind of formation of that on the Lightning Network, which has security issues and a bad incentives model, which simply doesn't work at the moment. Yes, there are people providing liquidity to that network, but they're not being rewarded for the time, especially compared to how much they can make as a return on that investment and liquidity somewhere else. Sure. And then we have, of course, side chains. The side chains on Bitcoin right now are what are called federated side chains. Now, it's a nice word, federated. It feels like everyone's working together. It's a federated side chain. What does that actually mean? I think the liquid side chain from Blockstream is a great example of this. So who are the people who decide if you can access the network, if you can withdraw your money, who decide basically what you can or cannot do? They are the masters of that side chain. Sure. They are the exchanges. They are Blockstream. Now, we already trust these people with our money in one way or another. So are they going to do something that's going to work against the interests of the community? Probably not. But I don't want to have to trust somebody. I don't want to have to ask that question. When I send money on Bitcoin, on the core protocol, I don't have to ask that question. I know it's simply going to work. I don't have to make my transactions at the good grace of the federal members of the liquid side chain. That's not what Bitcoin's about. Sure. So that's why I see we're going to see massive value flowing over to Ethereum, because and other cryptocurrencies. Monero's got a very strong use case. Cardano is going to be one of the key Ethereum competitors. We see a whole host of other things going on. And we haven't even talked about the tokens. The tokens themselves are going to provide a lot of value. We see things like Basic Attention Token, like Maker, like Synthetics. These are providing real value right now, and they're built on top of Ethereum. So all these tokens will also be very, very interesting in the long term. Will any of them become as big as the underlying protocol? Probably not. But they're very interesting nevertheless.
I mean, it could happen, I guess, with especially with DeFi. Like, there's two topics that I just wanted to touch, since we're talking about like Ethereum. Do you think that actually DeFi do you think it could be done on Bitcoin someday, or do you think it will remain mostly on Ethereum?
I think that we could definitely see a situation where we could easily see some decentralized finance products happening on Bitcoin at some point in the future. The question is, right now, you look at Maker, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the most popular decentralized finance applications, right? So if I'm going to take, let's say, 10 Bitcoin and loan that, use that as collateral for a loan, so I can get, let's say, $50,000 in cash. Sure. Do I really want to do that on a federated side chain where I have to then trust somebody, or do I really want to do that on the Lightning Network where it's less secure? And no, the answer is no. I would do that on Ethereum where it's got a history of working and a stronger security element built in around smart contracts. Now, we could easily see some decentralized products being built on Bitcoin in the future as we see these different things become more robust, as root stock becomes more relevant, and all these different things. So there's definitely the potential there for some of these decentralized finance applications to be built on top of Bitcoin. When will we see that happen? Who knows? But it's certainly there. Certainly there. Not with the current models, though.
Of course. And just to finalize, I mean, we already spoken about other projects that are being built on top of Ethereum. I think you mentioned BAT, for example, the Brave Attention token. I'm currently using the Brave browser. I really like the Brave browser. Actually, it's pretty cool. I mean, is there any other project that you want to to mention, like that's being built, that's currently being built on Ethereum, that you like, or do you think it's going to improve the usability of the network in the future?
I think there's a lot of really great projects that have done some really, really awesome stuff. And as some examples, I mean, obviously, basic attention token's amazing, Maker is amazing, Synthetics is amazing. I think the gaming, though, is a really interesting use case that's going to bring a whole new generation of young people into cryptocurrencies in a big way. And we see what Engine is doing. Engine's probably one of the most interesting cryptocurrencies built on top of Ethereum for a whole different range of reasons. But really, it's enabling gaming in a very interesting and unique way to happen, and bringing those blockchain-based unique assets in. And another very interesting game is actually Gods Unchained, which is kind of like Magic the Gathering. You know about this?
Yeah, no.
It's a cool game, and those guys have actually been doing a lot of work in the background to basically make Ethereum better. So I got a lot of respect for that team and what they've done with really being able to make non-fungible tokens much less intense on the network. Because we all remember the CryptoKitties debacle, and that came basically around every new creation. Every new creation of a kitty used up all this network power because they had all these smart contracts that had to be processed, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas now we have Gods Unchained, which is issuing bucket loads of non-fungible tokens, and they're doing it in a way that is not clogging up the network because they've addressed those issues at a core level and have made new code that allows for Ethereum to be better, which is awesome.
Yep, exactly. They basically used, I think, new standards. Not only the 771, I think they used the 773 as well, and a couple of other ones that literally completely changed how the NFTs were deployed into the network. So instead of one by one, it goes by buckets, basically, as you said. It's awesome. I really like that game. That game is pretty awesome. If you guys don't know about it, try it. God Unchained is pretty cool. It's awesome because last week I spoke to Roham, the guy behind the CryptoKitties, the founder of Dapper Labs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and basically he was actually just speaking about that. They have a new project. It's a Top Shot. It's with the NBA, and basically it's a collectibles for the fans, basically. But they're actually using these new technologies. So it's pretty awesome that there's other projects that even like CryptoKitties, they're already trying to rebuild what they're doing, basically, if I can put it this way. It's awesome, and I think in the future, especially with implementation of Ethereum 2.0, these types of projects, gaming, as you said, it can be developed to a completely new level, and that can bring loads of new adoption, because we know that gaming, esports, all that stuff, people love it. Collectibles, imagine applying collectibles to businesses, right? Like as rewards for employees, for example. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, it can go crazy. I mean, and it's not only games; it's everything, right? Everything will be tokenizing that way. It's not that It's not about tokenizing every asset, but if you can tokenize rewards and the way that you deal with digital assets, if you can put it that way. We know that kids spend tons of money on skins in Fortnite and stuff like that. So I mean, the market is there for sure. That's
absolutely.
Yep.
It's the market's massive for it, and it's just about tapping into that and conveying that message to the next generation to say, hey, you can now uniquely own your assets and swap them and easily resell them on a wide variety of secondary markets. It'll be huge.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's going to be interesting, the generation gap, when some kids are just talking to their parents about stuff that they don't get. They're already trading stuff, and their parents don't even understand that they can be making shitloads of money. That's going to be an interesting future, I guess.
Absolutely, it will be.
Yeah, man. I think we covered all the topics that I wanted to discuss, man. It has been an awesome conversation, dude. Honestly, you're a great guy to speak to. I hope we can do this in the future again. And yeah, man. I'll basically send you like the article link and the video and everything. So you can just take a look at that
Yeah,
in the
awesome.
piece as well. Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Lark.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye bye.